We're combining all the best old school wisdom with all the top new school methods to bring you the optimal way to coach and play the great game of baseball. This is the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass with Coach Bo.
Welcome, everyone. Coach Bo here. Welcome to episode 71 of our weekly get-together. In episode 71 here, we are going to discuss a book that I am currently reading called Buzz Saw by Jesse Dougherty. And we're going to discuss specifically something that we can all learn from Dave Martinez, the manager of the Washington Nationals. And I'm going to discuss what I think is a good tip that we can all use and learn from Dave Martinez, and it has to do with setting a parameter, having a parameter rather than a strict cage type of mindset when it comes to what we're allowing our players to do, or should I say get away with. Now, there are certain things that we want to draw a line in the sand and have no wiggle room with: disrespect, blatant safety issues, bullying, backtalk, etc. And it also could be discussed or described as a leash. And you do not want to have with your players, in my opinion, on many things, you do not want to have a 3-foot leash. So we're going to talk about that here in part one. Part two, we're going to talk about the flaw that I continue to see, and I think we will always see everywhere in life, but definitely in baseball, the jack of all trades trap. I call it the jack trap, the jack of all trades trap. We're going to talk about why that happens and how we can avoid it, because either you're going to be the jack of all trades and probably mediocre at best at any of them, or you're going to be the master of the big needle movers. And again, this is specifically talking to youth baseball coaches. College coaches and professional coaches are in a different atmosphere. They have a lot more practice time, and it's very important that we avoid some things when it comes to copying and listening to these college coaches and these professional coaches and even these advanced high school coaches. While their wisdom is awesome and while they have a lot of knowledge about the game, they're coaching a totally different animal than youth baseball in a lot of ways. Not completely different by any means. There are a lot of similarities between professional, college, advanced high school, and youth baseball. But there is definitely a massive difference when it comes to practice time and training time. There just is, and there's no arguing that. And that we need to accept that and be okay that as a youth coach, you might have 4 or 6 hours a week, where a college or a high school coach and a professional coach is typically going to have a lot more than that per week. Over the course of the year, they're going to have a lot more of it also. So we'll discuss the jack trap in part 2 and how we can avoid this. And then in part 3, I'm going to talk about a game that I was at. This was a game, not just any game, but a game in which a major league record occurred. And we're going to go all the way back to 1990 to discuss what we can learn from this game that I was at 31 years ago, 1990, Phillies, Dodgers. And it's a good learning message, I believe. So we'll get into those 3 parts. Also at the end, I have a little bonus that I want to share with you. And let's be real upfront from the get-go here. Coaches, this podcast, this masterclass is not for everybody. I don't want it to be for everybody, because I know if it's for everybody, then it's going to be for nobody. And what I mean by that is I'm not trying to make everybody happy. If I wanted to just, the biggest problem that I run into, or we run into as coaches in the baseball world, or in my specific role, is the appeasing of the confirmation bias. And so there's so many coaches and so many people in the baseball community that have learned it a certain way. And I was like this when I first started coaching and playing, definitely when I was playing. We knew baseball a certain way, and we wanted to hear and listen to people confirm that that was the way to do it. So the confirmation bias is really big in baseball. It's a problem everywhere, and it hinders growth and progress everywhere. But confirmation bias is massive in the baseball community. So with that said, I know that I'm not going to be able to break through and appease everybody, because what I'm sharing here, I'm not trying to share what everybody wants to hear. What I'm trying to share here is a better way, or an optimal way, or a simplified version of an already proven great way to play and coach baseball. I knew it coming in. I know there was going to be, I have a lot of great emails coming my way, a lot of great messages coming my way that are coaches that are loving the podcast. They're loving this 80-20 baseball masterclass. But I know at the end of the day, I put my head on my pillow and I know what I'm doing is I've never been somebody who's looking to have people pat me on the back. What I'm trying to do is produce something that I believe in and I've believed in for a long time. This is something a long time in the making. All right. I started baseball back in 1985. 86. I was going to baseball games 35 years ago. And as I learned it, and as I've gotten older and had such phenomenal coaches along the way, and I played the game myself at a high level, I learned that there were definitely some ways it could be improved. Now, there are definitely some people that I think are trying to change the game of baseball completely. And I think that is not a good way because baseball is not like the internet. It's not like these other technology industries. Baseball has been around. It has a set parameters. It has the laws of physics. It has set rules. It's been around for 150 years. It's a different animal in terms of trying to just outright change it. But there's also those coaches that are so far the other way. There's those people in baseball that are so far the other way that they don't think anything can be improved, or if it's something different than what they've heard, then they just dismiss it out of hand because that confirmation bias really eats at them. So I knew coming in, I know there's going to be, my message here was this isn't for everybody. That's fine. But I know the coaches that are buying into this and that give it time and build it into their system, they are going to have success because this stuff is proven. This has been proven. I back it with evidence. It's also been proven throughout the world, not just in baseball. When it comes to things like efficiency or the 80-20 principle is definitely not a baseball thing. In fact, I've never heard anybody in the game of baseball, and I've been around a lot of great minds, ever mention the 80-20 rule. But if you go into the business world, you're probably going to hear it somewhere, or you're going to hear somebody discuss a strategy or their philosophy or their methods, and it's going to sound like, hey, this is the 80-20 principle. All right. Sorry for my little rant there, but I had to get out there and say this podcast is designed for those coaches that are not looking to change the world, not looking to change baseball just for change's sake, but they're not contrarian just to be contrarian. This masterclass is designed for that group of coaches that's going to put their ego aside, know there's a better way. We're not just looking for a better way just for change's sake, but they know there's probably a better way. And also those coaches that value prioritizing big needle movers, not ignoring everything else, but just allocating time appropriately and accordingly. And with that said, let's get into part one. Part one, I'm reading this book, Buzzsaw by Jesse Doherty. It's a good book. I love these books. It basically breaks down the season. It gives the background to the 2019 season for the Washington Nationals. It also has a backstory to the organization itself. These books, again, I like these books that discuss first off, they're breaking down these types of books. There was Astro Ball. There was this Buzzsaw. There's been books on the Red Sox, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the book, but that they break down the Cubs way, or the Cub Way. That book was a really good book, and I believe that was by Verducci. And they break down the championship seasons and the backstory that got them to that place. And so what I do is I look for common characteristics. I also look for things that we in the youth baseball coaching community can utilize, because like I said, you got to be real careful. There's so much stuff out there coming from the elite coaches, the professional coach. When I say elite, they're professional. They coach professionals. They coach college. They coach high school, advanced players. They want to sound advanced. They want to come across very advanced. So they're going to talk about all these little technical things. And that's great. But that stuff really, at the end of the day, for the most part, is not stuff we should be discussing at length with youth baseball. Youth baseball is a different animal in a sense where you just have a lot less time and you're working with players that have not perfected even the fundamentals like the professional players have perfected for the most part. So this backstory on Buzzsaw, great book by Jesse Doherty. And here's one thing we can learn. Dave Martinez, the manager, he allows his players to celebrate after things like home runs and big plays. He lets his players have a lot of fun and express it. They don't have to be stoic. He allows his players, Coach Martinez of the Washington Nationals allows his players to dance. He allows them to celebrate. His thing is, and his leash ends at the point where it's done in front of the other team team, such as out on the field. He allows his players to dance and have fun and celebrate home runs, but it must be done in the dugout. So he doesn't say, hey, act like you've been there, don't celebrate, you act cool. No, he lets these guys have fun. He lets his players have fun and enjoy the success, but he also sets parameters on it. You can't do it on the field, he tells them. Don't do it on the field. If you're going to celebrate this, that, or the other, get in the dugout and do it. And you don't do it towards the other team. You do it as a team together towards each other. So I think this is awesome. Let your players celebrate. Let them have fun, but tell them it needs to be with their team. It needs to be in the dugout. It needs to be looking towards each other, not out towards the field. So there's parameters to the rules on a lot of things like celebration. Celebration, let them celebrate. Let them dance. Let them do it. Make sure it's in the dugout. Dave Martinez sets a good example of this for the Washington Nationals. Now, there's always caveats to this. The caveat would be like if it's a walk-off hit or a walk-off home run. Yeah, or it's the end of the game. You punch out the other team's player, they strike them out, and everybody goes out on the field. You win the tournament. Yeah, you're going to go celebrate out on the field. But again, that shouldn't be directed at all towards the other team. It should be eyes on each other, keeping it within the team, within your team. I'm talking about during the game, not the end of the game type of play or walk-off stuff. Of course, that will naturally spill out onto the field. All right, part two. I think this is something that we need to be careful of in the coaching community, definitely. And this is an epidemic, I believe, an epidemic. And I say epidemic, it's not like a pandemic. What I'm saying is it's ubiquitous. It's ubiquitous across the baseball community. Coaches want to be the jack of all trades. And I believe it is one of two things, ego, or it could be one of multiple things. But I think there's a couple things going on. Your ego. Coaches don't want to be embarrassed. And this is not a good place to be because if you're embarrassed, that's your ego talking. And coaches that want to cover every facet of the game, so if it happens in the game, their team doesn't get embarrassed because they think their team is a reflection of them, you probably should think twice about coaching because that's a bad place to start. Put your ego aside, be okay losing a few battles. And I definitely want to be careful with this analogy, battles and wars, winning the war, because sports is not even close to that. And it's crazy how many coaches treat it like it is. And I was going to say that, hey, if you're a coach that goes out there and treats baseball or sports like it's some kind of war and you're just crazy about it, first off, this podcast is probably not for you. And second off, you should really think about going to West Point and being a military leader because that's a better fit, not youth sports. I'm not saying you shouldn't have standards and be tough on your players and things like that, but it's a game. At the end of the day, it's a game and it's a vehicle to make better human beings as we get older. And being a general out there isn't always the best way to handle kids. It's great in the military, but it's not always the best fit for youth sports. So you don't want to be the jack of all trades. Avoid the jack trap. It's an ego thing. It's we need to look good. We can't mess up this or that or the other. Just be careful. Youth coaches don't fall for the jack trap, the jack of all trades. Be the master of those things I just discussed, and your team won't have to worry about these little things like that because you're going to be winning way more games than you're going to be losing. And also, those games are not going to come down to one-run games because you're playing catch, you're fielding the ground balls you should, you're catching the fly balls you should, you're throwing strikes, you're not walking the world, you're competing on the mound, and your hitting approach is driving in and producing a lot of runs. Couple that with some base running practice during scrimmages, or should I say during games, practice games, during batting practice reps, live reps off the bat, and then your base running is going to be in a good place. There's also another flaw that we're discussing here now in part two, the jack of all trades trap. Youth coaches and even high school coaches, that's not your full-time job. The only coach that has a full-time job in baseball is, for the most part, outside of like private, advanced, private, well-funded high schools, is college and professional coaches. Everybody else, the other 99.999%, which is mostly all youth and high school, the high school are usually teachers for the most part, or they're walk-on coaches and they have jobs outside of that coaching. But then there's the youth coach, which typically almost always has a job that's not even related to baseball. You're a doctor, you run your own business, you're a construction, you're a landscape, and you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're something outside of baseball. And so you hear a lot of these coaching pointers coming from the baseball community. You're taking them in, not just here, but you're probably hearing them other places or you've learned them over the years. And it's really difficult to vet and filter and then prioritize and gauge not only what is good advice, but where it falls on the priority list, right? what I feel is important is we know what happens in the game the most. And let's stick to learning and being the best coach when it comes to that. We've broken down the hitting approach here. I've talked about the pitching, throwing multiple pitches. We're going to discuss more and more pitching as we go on. We talk about the throwing routine, more accuracy, how to develop more accuracy, and what you can do as a coach to coach up more accuracy. So throwing accuracy, fielding ground balls, catching fly balls, again, that kind of goes with the throwing accuracy. There's your defense. And then pitching, which is throwing accuracy, but also throwing accuracy with multiple pitches in multiple locations. Your hitting approach is at the very top. The success of your hitters and the success of your pitchers are the two biggest needle movers by far. And then it comes down to your defenses typically right after that. And base running falls in there further down the list. Well, not further down the list, but next on the list, but there's a bigger drop to that. So I talked about the talent tease. Avoid the talent tease when you're picking players. Avoid the jack trap. Avoid the jack trap. It's like late night. You're hungry. You're like, I don't really want to eat. I know I shouldn't eat. It's late, but there's a jack in the box. And then you go all in on jack in the box. And you wake up the next day, you're like, man, I fell for the jack trap. Now, all not really funny late night college jokes aside about jack in the box, it's kind of the same idea here. Don't fall for that jack trap, that jack tease. Be the master as a youth coach of those things that matter. And so you're not only going to learn more about those specific areas more, you're going to dive deeper into pitching, learning more about pitching. You're going to dive deeper into how to design a drill for all of these, but hitting, fielding, throwing. If you cover and learn those things in depth more and say, you know what, I don't really need to learn as much about how to do the best rundown defense. I don't need to know how to have 4 bunt defensive plays. I don't need to have 7 first and third offense plays. You can really focus on those things that matter. And then when you get out there, you allocate it down to that. This podcast and this masterclass, I really want to, and I've shared this with you many times, but those of you that are new to the show, and I see the numbers going up every week, so there are new listeners, I'm sure of that each week. This is not for everybody. This is not somebody who wants to be average or mediocre or have a little knowledge about everything, or you want your players to know a little bit about everything so they're not. I would rather my players look foolish on a couple things that happen once a season or twice a season than look foolish throughout the year as hitters and pitchers, and then definitely on defense. I would rather my pitching staff be dialed in and my hitters be dialed in and let everything else fall together outside of working on fielding ground balls, catching fly balls, and making accurate throws on defense. I'd rather just let everything else kind of fall together through scrimmages or games, practice games, or scrimmages with other teams, etc. All right. Now, part 3. We're going to finish good here. 1990, August 21st, 1990. I'm at Dodger Stadium. It's my pops' birthday, my old man's birthday, August 21st. So we're at Dodger Stadium. The Dodgers are playing the Philadelphia Phillies. We're all Dodger fans. My dad grew up a Dodger fan. My dad went to Dodger Stadium the first year it opened. I think it was 1962. And so we go to the game. In fact, my dad had a friend who got us into the stadium before the game. This is, again, a long time ago. We got into the stadium before the game, well before anybody else. We got to walk through. This was 2 years after they won the championship in '88. We got to go into the offices, walk through the offices. We got to see the World Series trophy. We got to kind of go in the back and see everything behind the scenes. It was really cool. I mean, especially for somebody like me who was a diehard Dodger fan who could recite their starting lineup when I was 5 years old. It was really cool. And so even we went down to, it was one thing, it was kind of cool. This is an offshoot of this story, was before the game, we obviously got to see batting practice. Typically fans don't get in to see batting practice for the home team. Typically they're let in right around where the home team is finishing up or done. At least at that time, that's how it was for the Dodgers. And we were in there, we were the only fans in there for the Dodgers batting practice. And I remember watching Fernando Valenzuela take batting practice. And if you don't know who Fernando Valenzuela is, I don't know if you should be coaching baseball. No, I'm just kidding. But there Fernando was, he was hitting, and Fernando was switch hitting home runs. He was switch hitting home runs. For me, it was interesting because one, he was a pitcher. And so you already have very low expectations of what they're going to do with the bat. But he was hitting home runs right and left-handed. Fernando, what an athlete. He was like the Bartolo Colon of the 80s. He didn't look like an athlete. If you saw him down the street, you would have no idea this guy, you would think he didn't even make his high school team if you saw him in just regular street clothes, a pudgy guy, but he was hitting home runs left and right-handed. So that was pretty cool. Kind of caught me off guard because I was like, wait a second, this is a pitcher and he's hitting home runs. Now it was batting practice, of course. So we got to make sure we put some context there. So what happened? The MLB record. It is the MLB record for a team in terms of winning a game with the lowest win expectancy percentage. The Phillies had a win expectancy percentage of .01. The Philadelphia Phillies Phillies were losing the game 11-1. They were losing 11-1 going into the 7th inning. So they were down 11-1 in the 7th inning. They scored 2 runs in the 8th to make it 11-3. And then they got some help by the Dodgers in the 9th inning on some errors. And they scored 9 runs in the 9th. That included John Kruk, game-tying 3-run home run, and Carmelo Martinez's go-ahead RBI double. The Phillies won the game. They were losing 11-1 in the 7th inning. And they became only the 4th team in history and only team since 1934 to erase at least an 8-run deficit in the 9th and go on to win. But the win percentage, the win expectancy was the lowest ever for a team that won the game. And so, needless to say, I was pretty distraught. Now, besides my pity party as a youngster after going home after this game, we can learn from this game. It's important when our team is down or up a lot. You don't want to ride the wave of momentum, or you don't want to ride the emotional wave roller coaster as a coach. You definitely want to ride momentum if you can, but emotional roller coasters are no good. They're going to bite you as much as they help you. If your team gets down, you're not playing the score. We talked about results versus process. In the middle of a game, I highly recommend you don't focus much on the score. Only when it dictates, in those certain circumstances during the game, a coaching decision based off of the score. That's not as much as you might think. What is important is to remember is to stay focused on the next at-bat, the next pitch, and let that take care of itself. Basically, stay present. It's going to be what it's going to be based off of the next at-bat, the next inning of pitching and playing defense. If you have a chance, you're not going to wish it. You're not going to wish yourself 11 runs. It's just not going to happen. You have to work it, keep sticking with your process. If you need to make little adjustments, make little adjustments, or a wholesale adjustment. What do you got to lose? Maybe this is a time to test out something new that maybe a pitcher you've never used, maybe a pitch that a pitcher has been working on. Maybe this is a time to work on it. But other than that, if you're making wholesale changes in the middle of the game or in the middle of a game as a coach, wholesale coaching changes, I'm not saying like you swap your subs out for your starters. What I'm talking about is if you're making wholesale coaching changes and teaching and coaching differently, then you probably were way off the mark earlier. And typically that should never happen. You shouldn't just evolve as a coach in 2 innings. All right. You shouldn't just make massive strides one way or the other as a coach between each half inning or between the 5th and the 6th inning. But what you want to do in these circumstances is just stay focused on, don't talk about the score. Don't bring it up. All right. Hey, just talk about the next at bat. Talk about the hitting approach. Talk about the pitcher competing, making good pitches, working on that changeup, working on the fastball. Talk about your defense being in a ready position. So you as a coach you have to set the tone. You have to stay calm and even keel. You have to be the adult. You have to be the anchor. A team with a coach that can't stay even keel is like a boat without an anchor. I've never seen a youth team stay calm and collected when their coaches lost their cool and got all worked up. It's a game. You should give it your focus. You should really be focused on it. You should give it your full focus and intent, and you should give it your best, but you shouldn't lose your cool if you get so worked up. So chill out, coach up your team, focus on how they can get better, stay even keel. Of course, enforce your energy and effort rules. If you have players that are not giving it full effort, then they come out of the game. That should not change whether you're up 10, up 11, down 11. But to avoid your team going down in the dumps when they're getting boat raced is to not focus your in-game dialogue on the score. In fact, you shouldn't talk about the score a lot during the game. Use the score, use the result after the game to assess your process and to assess it and improve it, to tinker with it after the game. I wouldn't just do it after one game. I would look for patterns, but definitely you want to use the score because the score is the result, to tinker with the process, your in-game process. But I would not use the score as something to focus on your in-game dialogue. You can use it after the game to reflect on the process, but during the game, I highly recommend that you center your dialogue, your coaching dialogue, around what's taking place in that very next moment. So long as your players are playing with good energy and good effort and 100% willingness to go out there and give it their best. All right, I was extra passionate about this podcast today. Sometimes, I'm always energized or I'm ready to go. I'm always looking forward to recording these episodes, but sometimes I just get going. Some of it's, I think, just because there's such a disconnect between what it's going to take for the baseball community to be successful and where it's at. But that's okay. That's okay because this is for you, the listeners of this show. And I'm trying to give you that big competitive advantage, not just on building a better skilled team, a better team in terms of X's and O's, but also working with those Jimmys and Joes, working with your players to build up a better team and culture and better people. So as long as you're on board, you trust me on this, you're going to have a lot of success. I promise you. If you want a copy of the Drill Mastery Guide, a guide that shows you the ingredients, the steps to building a great drill anytime, anywhere, email me, Coach Bo at 8020baseball.com, Coach Bo at 8020baseball.com. It's got some reading in it. So if you get it, you expect to do some reading. It's more of a paradigm shifter than it is, hey, here's a drill for this, here's a drill for that. I got those, but it's foolish for me to give you the fish when I can teach you how to fish. There's a lot of this in the baseball community here, like, whoa, I want to teach you how to fish. I don't want to just give you a fish. And then they hand out hey, here are my top 5 drills. All right, use these drills. Well, those drills may not work for every team. Maybe those teams don't need to work on those things. Maybe their environment, their setup, the amount of players they have, the amount of coaches they have, the equipment they have, the facilities they have, the amount of time they have don't fit. The level of the team, it just doesn't fit. I want to teach you how to fish when it comes to this drill. So reach out to me, Coach Bo at 8020 Baseball for the Drill Mastery Guide. I'll email you that. And until then, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, take this out there and make the baseball community more fun, make it a better place, add to it, bring it up a level, make it better than you found it, leave it better than you found it. And you're going to win more games along the way, and your players are going to become better people, and you're going to have a lot more fun. Until next time, take care.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.